Buddhist modernist view is the logical negation of the Buddhist traditionalist view. So, it looks like they want to fight, but of course they're Buddhists, so they don't. But it looked like want to make two different camps. Oh, you're no good. You're not a real Buddhist. Well, let's be careful about that. I give you one controversial example on this very question. Around the world, wherever I go, I see in monasteries people taking the refuges as a starting point for becoming a Buddhist. But I have worked with one group out of Korea that was developing a meditation center in Philadelphia. And this group is Buddhist, is certified by the Korean government as Buddhist, is not in the traditional Choge order, not in that lineage. It's in a new Buddhism lineage. There were new religions in Japan too that have become Buddhist. But this group is quite interesting in that it doesn't have taking refuge as part of its practice. So after a few years of association with them, seeing this a long time, I asked, okay, can I write an article on this for your journal? And it was controversial, as much of my writing is. The article was, is Won Buddhism Buddhist? And I raised the kinds of concerns a Buddhist would in any country where they follow the format of, I believe in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, recited 3 times, normally in public in a ritual atmosphere, but actually I think you can become Buddhist by yourself in your own room just by reciting the refuges anytime you want. You can also renew your vow anytime you want. Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So this group doesn't do that. So I called them on it. The response was underwhelming because they already knew that they don't use the refuges, and they weren't persuaded by any arguments to the contrary that they should do, because they follow their own teachers. They follow their own lineage. Okay, so it is of note that there are disagreements between Buddhist groups about even very basic things like refuges. So when we come to modernism, it includes a lot. An overview comment about Professor Richard Gombrich's interview with the Secular Buddhism Organization relates the idea of Buddhism to the modern worldview like this. Now, you all know Richard Gombrich, right? You met Sunil Huang. He was a direct pupil of Gombrich's at Oxford. You know me. Gombrich was my external examiner, largely responsible for certifying my PhD at the University of London. And now I'm quoting the Secular Buddhist Society's comment in the interview. It's not clear in the text whether Gombrich said this, but it is something that came out of the context of his interview with the person discussing. So here's the quotation. The term living tradition may seem as much a contradiction in terms as well as secular Buddhism. Oxymoron means contradiction in terms. The term living tradition may seem as much a contradiction in terms as, well, secular Buddhism. And yet, the organic vitality is a hallmark of Buddhism, even and especially today. There are growing pains as Buddhism rubs up against and eventually becomes part of each different cultural context it encounters. But eventually, Buddhism settles in. Think of Buddhism coming to China and being confused as Taoism for a couple hundred years until they got the terminology right. Think of Buddhism long ago entering Thailand, and there is the knot cult. But it settled in. It has been an evolutionary tale as new forms arise from selective pressures of the environment, while older varieties may still flourish, or at least soldier on. Today is perhaps the greatest assault, as new ideas and cultures are pushing and pulling the tradition with unprecedented, never before, rapidity and variety. If you want to read it, here's the link. I think you already have it somewhere in your email. Buddhism as a living tradition necessitates the kind of disputable questions that have arisen. We cannot avoid them if we're going to be honest. Okay, start the body of the paper. This first section uses the CBT, Guidance and Insight from the Buddha, which includes Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana texts and is widely available now on PDF. I'm really happy about this because many people have asked me they want this book, but it's too complicated to get this book. It's controlled by us here at IBSC. Getting a hard copy is difficult and expensive. But now, no problem. It's worldwide available for free. It is a singular development in the study of religion in Thailand today to have one volume that authoritatively presents Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana, translations of Buddhist texts. So the first part of this paper shows in practice that a topic in Buddhism may be presented well in one volume with a little more than 400 pages. MCU's Common Buddhist Text. Later in the paper, I will make my own argument toward proving a particular thesis about the interpretation of karma and rebirth against the background of traditionalist and modernist approaches of Theravada. So let me give you a quick summary of what CBT says about karma and rebirth. Here, it's easy to pick a topic, karma and rebirth, sketch the outlines of the Buddha's view with exact textual references on Pali, and I now summarize. In Theravada Buddhism, there is samsara, a cycle of rebirths, but it is without a known beginning. So there is no evidence of a first beginning by a monotheistic substance called God. Tinakatha Sutta of Samyutta Nikaya. The reality of rebirth and karma is understood in Theravada Buddhism as independent from sacrifices and gifts, unlike in ancient Hindu rituals. It is an error to deny a future life, and how one is reborn depends on one's conduct. Awakened ones know directly and see this. Apanaka Sutta of Majjhima Nikaya 1. Buddhists think that believing in rebirth and karma is a safe bet, as stated in the third part of Kalama Sutta. This last one is a very important and well-known sutta, but not one that people usually study deeply and completely. Part one is about being self-reliant. Part two is about paying attention to the words of the wise ones, that is, the intellectuals or the Vinu of the time. And the third part is the probabilistic argument to the effect that believing in karma and rebirth is a safe bet. Kesaputta. Another sutta says there are 5 main rebirth realms: purgatory, animal, hungry ghost, human, and the gods. Vedika Sutta of Anguttara Nikaya. Please notice that I depart from the traditional use of hell as a translation of Niraya. I fail to understand why this persists. Hell is a permanent state of damnation. There is nothing permanent in Buddhism. There is no God to damn somebody. So what is Niraya? It is an impermanent, not permanent realm of suffering caused by previous Kamma. That is all. It is not forever. So it is not hell. Now, if you don't believe me, another move you can make is to just leave Niraya untranslated so as not to get the ire of people who are hell-bent on the word hell as the best translation. Okay. As Buddhism developed, there came to be a sixth realm, the Titans. This is a hypothesis. Of course, we can't be exactly sure. Perhaps the Deva were of two types, one benevolent and shining, and another malevolent and loved to fight, pugilistic. The Titans, or Asura, were then divided over time from the benevolent deities to be an independent realm to make a sixth rebirth realm. Anyway, rebirth as a human is a precious and rare opportunity, as Nakasika Sutta explains. If one is to have a human rebirth, then it is prudent to use the opportunity to attain enlightenment. Do you believe this? I believe this. So what do? Practice. Born as a human to hear Dhamma is rare. Dhammapada 182. So since life is short, it's good to practice while you can. Dhammapada 47. The four consolations of Kesamuti or Kalama Sutta are, if there is a heaven and I'm free from hate and ill will, I will experience it. If there is not a heaven, I will still have been free from hate and ill will. If bad things happen to people who do bad things, since I have no bad intentions, then I will be unharmed. If bad things don't happen to people who do bad things, I will be pure anyway. Kesamuti Sutta. Bhikkhu Sujato translation. While the Kalamas of Kesamuti, looking at this from Sutta Central, have this emphasis. Our world in the context of the universe is one among many clusters of worlds throughout the universe, extending into an indefinite past. I can't say infinite, I can't say indefinite, but I can say indefinite or infinite. Why? The Pali word, as studied by one expert I consulted, is not one that makes a distinction between the indefinite and the infinite. In American thought, American Western philosophy, very important to distinguish these two. Indefinite means very long, but makes no judgment about a starting point. Infinite means so long that there is no beginning. Of these, or I should say neither of them, is included in the Buddhist expression about worlds stretching back and back. So I just usually say indefinite or infinite. There are cycles of cosmic eons in the Buddhist view, Pabhata Sutta. Next, to consider karma. So we talked a lot about rebirth. Kamma is basically volition, Nibbedika Sutta. And one's unskillful actions have karmic impact sooner or later, Dhammapada 69 to 71. One's actions and thoughts determine one's rebirth, not the rituals of other people. Asibandhika Putta Sutta of Samyutta Nikaya 4. Karma shows how past actions lead to differences among people. Kulakama Vibhanga Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 3. However, experiences and skillful and unskillful actions cannot all be blamed on past karma or a god, but neither are they causeless.
Excuse me, Prabhupada.
Titta Ya Katana Sutta.
Can you change the slide?
Sorry? Hello?
The slide. You did not change, you did not turn the page.
I'm still on the previous page, but in my view, I'm reading what I see. So I'll quickly finish that and hit the button. Thank you. Feelings of illnesses are not due to past karma. Not all do. Sivaka Sutta in Samyutta Nikaya 4. A good character can, now here's the takeaway point from this section. A good character can dilute the karmic results of a bad action. Lona Kapalaka Sutta in Gutra Nikaya 1. Okay, let me see now. Munchin, what do you see on your screen? What's the first word?
No, it's okay. Self-determination.
Self-determination. Okay, thank you. Self-determination of one's rebirth occurs through virtue, wisdom, and intention. Sankha Rupati Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 3. Self-determination of one's rebirth occurs through virtue, wisdom, and intention. Following the CBT, I'm using the word karma here because this word is widely known. It's become an English word. We don't need to italicize the word karma anymore. It's in the dictionaries. And kamma is more particular to Pali Buddhism people. Karma can mature slowly, and one's view and attitude at the end of one's life is important. You might consider kuti vijnana, the consciousness at the moment of death. It is considered to be in Theravada and also in Vajrayana even more. They have a special ritual about it. Very important for the next rebirth. That's why in the Bardo ceremony in Tibetan, they have the family and others close to the dying person around them to say, look, it's your time. Don't struggle. Don't worry. Let go. Be peaceful, so that the person has the right consciousness at the moment of death to get karmic benefit. There are implications of karma and rebirth for attitude to others. For example, we have experienced in the past both the good times and the bad times of other people. So sympathy to others and non-attachment to good experiences are wise. Dugatam and Sukhitam suttas of Samyutta Nikaya 2. This life and all rebirths result in aging, sickness, and death, and nothing that is conditioned is permanent. Mahaparinibbana Sutta Digha Nikaya 2 and Alagarupama Sutta Majjhima Nikaya 2. There are frailties of human life. Ratha Pala Sutta of Majjhima Nikaya 2. And one must accept the inevitability of death. Sala Sutta of Sutta Nipata. Anyway, the search for sensual pleasures leads to suffering. Kula Dukkha Sutta, Kula Dukkha Kanda Sutta of Majjhima Nikaya 1. Okay, that is a summary. And when I read this paper in California in a different version, this was all there because my intention was to show people 20 faculty from different colleges all across America, to show them with this one book, even if you are not a specialist in Buddhism, you can teach in a world religions class the unit on Buddhism. You need not ignore it out of fear that you will make a mistake. This is authoritative. Look at the editorial board. Just use it when you need to. You can read the exact thing from the sutta for that topic. And they were happy. I was so pleased that when I got back home, I arranged a benefactor to send each of the 20 faculty their own hard copy of CBT. That made me very happy too, that we have outcome from going to Society for Core Texts and Courses meeting in Monrovia, California, under the theme of which Asian texts should American college students read? That was the theme. Okay, traditionalist and modernist. I'm now in section 2 of the body of the paper. When Stephen Batchelor published his Buddhism Without Beliefs, it was a New York Times bestseller, by the way. Bhikkhu Bodhi objected to several points in it. I'll give you the citation for Batchelor. And Bhikkhu Bodhi's review of Buddhism Without Belief appeared in and is still available in the Buddhasasana homepage. Okay, now we have a lineup of 3 philosophical views: the traditionalist, the modernist, and the mediating view. I've tried to reconstruct as objectively as it might be possible for me to do so, each of the 3 positions by constructing an argument to represent each one. The first argument is traditionalist, and I ask you to contrast this schema with Bhikkhu Bodhi's review. You might, by the way, compare it to what Buddhadasa Bhikkhu says, because I think you see compare and contrast as very valuable. Okay. Review of Stephen Batchelor, Buddhism Without Beliefs, in the Journal of Buddhist Ethics, 1998, and also in this web link for buddhasas.org. What I see here, this is my reconstruction. There are 2 popular filters with which Buddhism is viewed: secularism and individualism. And viewing Buddhism with each of these 2 filters, one departs from traditional Buddhism. Premise 2. Naturalized karma and rebirth theory holds that without traditional concepts of karma, rebirth, and enlightenment after death, right? Karma theory may still be called karma theory if applied to experience in this very lifetime. That part is interesting, I think. Premise 3, concepts of karma, rebirth, and enlightenment form a conceptual web. Consider Quine's view, the web of belief. Form a conceptual web, and no one of these concepts is intelligible without the others. Four, individualism holds that individual action is preferable to collective action or state control, and is preferable to habits that emphasize the value of action or decision by oneself, as taught in Kalama Sutta. 5, the first part of Kalama Sutta, that self-reliance is important, forms a conceptual web with the second part on consulting the Vinu, and with the third part on the 4 assurances of the safe bet argument. I read you the 4 assurances already. If there's a heaven and so on, if there is not a heaven and so on. Premise 6. So there is no karma without rebirth by premise 3. And there is no self-reliance without consulting the Vinu and the safe bet argument of the 4 assurances by premise 5. Therefore, the traditionalist view, the naturalized karma view, and individualism are conceptually unconnected with related concepts that would ensure the meaning of the terms of traditional Buddhism. In other words, these guys are out to lunch, as we would say in America. Their ideas are just like free spinning wheels unconnected to any nearby mechanism. Okay, that might be going a little far, but I think that's basically what the traditionalists want to say. We can safely ignore Stephen Batchelor and his crowd of secular Buddhists because they're not really Buddhist. What they talk about is not connected to what we traditional Buddhists talk about. Now, that's the dangerous part to my way of thinking. You heard that Gombrich is giving us a little history lesson there at one point. He's saying, golly gee, as Buddhism goes around the world, it sure has changed, hasn't it? So what do we want to do? Do we want to start a blame game, pointing fingers at other Buddhists? Well, it's not my call. That's too big for my job description. I don't want to go there. Do you? Because that, in my view, is the road to Niraya. If the Buddhists themselves start arguing who is a Buddhist and who is not, what's going to be the future of Buddhism around the world? Look, the cat is out of the bag. The problem is already there, right? So I'm trying to figure out a way to mediate between these two positions, as extreme as they are, to go forward with a vision of unity about Buddhism in the world. Okay, now let's ask the semantic, epistemological, and pragmatic standards. What does it mean? How do you know? How does it work? This view, the traditionalist view, has a meaning, because there is a language game and form of life called meditation, pilgrimage, and donation linked together and with other concepts that fits coherently together. This view has an epistemological basis because there are those who practice the abhinya, samadhi, and pass to the ninth state of meditation who will know and see for themselves. Depending on the particular experience of individuals, there are many benefits possible from meditation, such as developing the four Brahma Viharas, metta, karuna, mudita, and upekkha, and reducing kodana, hatred and irritability. This view has pragmatic outcomes in terms of wellness and satisfaction that generations of meditators report having as benefits from studying with famous masters who know the psychic powers or opinion. And this Boron Kamathana, or old tradition, is getting a boost these days because a major European scholar, Crosby, has published a book on archaic Buddhism, on Boron Kamathana in the West. Westerners never heard of this. Most of us never heard of this old tradition. But Thai people know, because it's happening here and now. Thai people know. Here's argument B, and here you can compare with Stephen Batchelor. This is the modernist view, as I've called it, with my stipulative definition. And by the way, these terms can all be recrafted by other thinkers for their purposes. I'm saying by this term I will mean on the preceding pages. Okay, what's the modernist argument in my view? 1, Buddhism was never static but continually developed. 2, continually developing, there is no original form of Buddhism that remains totally unchanged. Now, let's pause for a minute. Each of the Buddhist schools, Sarvastivada, Sautrantika, and so on, had their own Vinaya and their own Sutta-Pitaka version. What comes down to us is the Theravada version. I'm interested in being as close as I can to the ideas of the Buddha. But we have to notice our historical placement and that knowledge is conditioned by our historical placement. So I don't want to say that I'm studying the exact ideas of the Buddha. We don't have them. Sorry. We have the best received and longest lasting, most resilient set of texts expressing Buddha Dhamma. That is the Theravada recension. We have that. That's good enough for me. But notice premise 2. Continually developing, there is no original form of early Buddhism that remains totally unchanged. Premise 3 of the modernists. Whether there is any unchanged core of Buddhist ideas is undetermined. Oh, wow. I didn't want to know this. Sorry. I wanted to know and believe what my teacher said early from Sri Lanka, that we are studying the very words of the Buddha. But once I gave a lecture when I was still a very new assistant professor, wet behind the ears, as the American idiom goes. I was very, very new. And I was championing early Buddhism, and I was eaten up by one really smart professor of the same topic. You can't maintain that anymore. And he gave me interesting reasons, and I thought and rethought. So I came to the view that I cannot know the very words of the Buddha, but I can get as close as is possible to the ideas of the Buddha because we have the Theravada recension. Okay. Premise 3 says, whether there is any unchanged core of Buddhist doctrine is undetermined. 4, being undetermined, notice the overlap here, there is only a range of possibility in a contested space, and there is no absolute standpoint to say a concept is or is not unconnected with Buddhism. There is no absolute standpoint. That doesn't mean you can't make your own argument. As a corollary, Buddhism has no static, early, or original absolute core doctrines by 1, 3, 2, 3, and 4. Therefore, on the Buddhist modernist view, oh no, what did I do? Just a moment, please. Hit the wrong button. Okay, therefore, you had it already back. It's this argument. Therefore, on the Buddhist modernist view, doctrines of naturalized karma and individualism may be connected to Buddhism. Notice in Roman numeral 2 section, this conclusion contradicts the conclusion of argument A in 1 above and leads to the mediating view of 3 that I will present after the break. Okay, that's it for now. Please enjoy your break and come back in 5 minutes. I will wrap this up in part of the next hour and give you a chance to talk to each other. Sadhu.